Going to the next slide. Are there any project requirements? You should be having a basic knowledge of version control machine, because we are deploying our all infrastructure on our EC2 instance, which is based on your cloud instances. So you should be having knowledge of what are EC2 instances and what are cloud instances and why we use EC2 instances. You should be having a clear picture of that. And as I discussed earlier, you'll be having knowledge of Ansible architecture, because we'll be using Ansible as deployment tool. If I directly use there and you don't have the proper knowledge of architecture, how the playbooks work, and how the Ansible architecture and how Ansible actually communicates to the different nodes, then it will be little bit tricky for you to understand. So if I elaborate things here, like version control machine, so you should be knowing why we are using Git, why not we can use SVN or other version control machine which are centralized. Sure, you should be knowing like the proper difference between your distributed and version control, is that is distributed version control and your centralized version control. What are the pros and cons for using this? Since we are using Git, it's a distributed version control. You should be knowing like why we are using it. I will just give a brief introduction about why we are using it, but proper knowledge of version controlling you should be knowing. I mean, if not proper, then a basic understanding. And knowledge of Ansible architecture is must, because we are using this as deploy our war file. Since we'll be compiling Java, and you'll be seeing a lot of Java architectures there and folders there. So if you have any prior experience with handling Java projects, you'll be having an idea how Java project works and how Maven compiles this and what are the folder structure, what is WebXML, what is meta-inf, what is web-inf, and what are the folder structures, what is pom.xml, because we are using inside those Java projects, and Java projects is built by Maven. Not only this, you should be knowing about the variables, environment variables, shell variables. These all things you should be knowing. I mean, it should not be like that you are hearing for the first time. It should be like, okay, you have heard that before but never implemented. That's okay. That we will take care of that. Well, going to the next slide, we have who are the target students. So I suppose anyone who are interested to learn DevOps methodology, or anyone who wants to implement DevOps in their architecture, they're free, and they are actually free to learn all these things. So there's no obstruction, or there should not be any issues while taking up this course. And the participants who was working as DevOps or development engineer in an MNC, or you're working for a startup, or you have own your classroom trainings and all. This is for all those person who wants to implement all those things. So this is for you guys. For the next will be like anyone who wants to learn and implement DevOps methodology. So what we have already discussed. And the last but not least is like any student who is willing to do project on DevOps. So may it be engineering students or any student who is actually looking for a change in their traditional method, or creating a project in their engineering final semester or somewhere where you have to demonstrate DevOps, then this case study will be very helpful for you guys to understand all those. Well, as I discussed earlier, the basic intention of this course study is like that you should be having that much of confidence level that you can implement DevOps in your infrastructure, in your MNC where you're working, in your company, and you should actually mimic all those things what we have learned here in your organization, and build your organization in such a way that it supports DevOps methodology, and your system is very robust and it's very fast, and whatever integration and software development you are doing, we are using DevOps, and it's actually a very good way to start up and to mimic all those things here. Our next slide will tell by the end of this project you'll be having following skill sets. So these skill sets are like you'll be having hands-on experience on real time how to set up DevOps tool in dev or test environment, or even production environment if you want to mimic all those things. So it just by noticing what all things I am doing, if you are mimicking the same thing, you'll be able to do. But you are free to choose all the DevOps tool what you want to choose, because a few tools few tools are like for the same purpose. So it depends on you what your organization needs. Sometimes organization needs a pull based mechanism, the intention or motto of the DevOps tool is same. So depending on the need, you can just choose. By the end of this project, you'll be having a knowledge of configuring and setting up Git. Not only Git, you will be having idea of setting Java home path, installing Java, setting up environment variables. When you come to Jenkins, you will be creating Jenkins. You will be configuring the credentials for that. That is admin credentials and other credentials. Then after that, you will be setting up CI/CD pipelines in Jenkins for continuous integration and continuous development. You'll be installing Maven in Jenkins, and you'll be installing all those plugins which is required for your Jenkins to work. After that, you'll be having a knowledge of how to create passwordless access between source and destination node, because we'll be deploying the code to our environment, and the environment will be on a different node, our code will be on different node, so there should not be any access issues. So once code is getting propagated to the destination, it should not prompt for password, because if it is prompting for password, then it's a manual intervention. We don't want any manual efforts while deploying, because this is not automation. Then if you are using if you are using manually everything, if you are changing any sort of things during this process, then it's hindering the process for automations. So we'll be creating passwordless access between source and destination node. We'll be configuring Ansible and using Ansible as a deployment tool. Note that Ansible is not only a deployment tool, it can be used as configuration management tool as well. You can use it as a project orchestration also. Next thing is like you'll be deploying codes on Apache Tomcat server. Apache Tomcat server is actually application based server, which acts like both take requests from. It can act like actually a proxy server also, which is web application, and it has all those features which supports application server. So we'll be deploying Java codes on your Apache server, Apache Tomcat server. What are the DevOps project contents in for this case study? So the contents we'll discuss here is like contents will be like configuring version control system. These all things we have discussed in the earlier slides, like Jenkins installation configuration, creating jobs and pipelines, Ansible installation, Java installation, Maven installation, installing plugins and all on your EC2 instance, and setting up playbooks to deploy codes, and then deploying project on your Tomcat. Now let's talk about case study for this project. So case studies like that, you have been hired as a software engineer in a product based or any service based software company, and they have hired you for one purpose, because they are using traditionally based software development tools, deployment tool, configuration management tool, build tool, and they are actually in need of upgrading their infrastructure. They have purposefully chosen you to implement the changes in their infrastructure so that it becomes robust, and the software lifecycle process becomes much easier to handle. It becomes at a faster pace. So you are as a DevOps engineer there, and your job is to implement all those DevOps tools and methodologies in your infrastructure on the company you are in. So let's talk about the problems what the companies are having. Not to be in detail, let's describe this in brief. Suppose that company is having one centralized data center first of all. So they are having on-prem data centers. So what happened? They have actually hired a third party who is taking care of the data centers. So whatever development is going on in their infrastructure or in their company, or whatever tools or whatever space is giving, they are getting assigned by the third party. In the sense, all this data is going to a data center, and it is actually a troublesome company, because suppose they have one node here which has 1 TB of data, in which you can store 1 TB of capacity is 1 TB of data, 1 TB data can be stored. And in your but what happens in your DBA team, there are a lot of queries and a lot of tables, and it actually fills up. Now they will do, they will raise an incident to the third party, and will ask them to either clean up the data, because they don't have access, DBA team doesn't have access to clean the data from the data centers or from the nodes, or to allocate more memory. And the other thing is like, suppose if there is a power cut in that region in data source and all, So that company will be impacted. Suppose it's a insurance company or it's a healthcare policies. So they have some limited time, like okay, suppose it is covered California, like it has some open enrollment time and these things. So if the operation is getting down at that time, because in that situation during October, November, open enrollment time will be there, so there will be a lot of data transaction will be there. In that situation, if you do the data centers fills up, then it actually disrupts your application server and your application will be down. If your application will be down, your business will be down, so it will be a huge loss. So you have to fix this also. The second thing is like their developers are using a centralized code base repository, that is version control. So there are a lot of issues while committing and while pushing the code to the master repositories. So apart from, you have to fix that issue also. The third thing is that they are using some manual tool which is building their artifact and then deploying on the application server. So what the tool is doing, actually that tool compiles the code which is coming from your SVN or your centralized repository, and then going into and connecting to each node manually. It is deploying the artifact, deploying the WAR file in their location, in their application location. So deploying on each of the nodes, it is taking a lot of time and it consumes a lot of time. So software development cycle, like software compilation, building and deploying, it is taking a lot of time. Suppose for one AT build, like the AT build is like the environment which you are testing your, after dev it comes your AT environments. So when you are building your AT build, so whole day it takes. So half of day the developers will be committing and editing the changes. If the compilation is having issues, if they're having compilation issues, they will again go back and then change. They will again make changes in the centralized repository. Then you are again, then you are asking them to okay, stop guys, I need to compile these things. Then you compile the code and then you send into your local building machine. Then you deploy these things. So this process takes a lot of time, like building and deploying. It takes full time and it slows down the process. So you are there to set and fix all those issues. So following scenario will be covered as part of this case study. Like you will be implementing the continuous integration development dev environment, and you will be installing distributed version control system to enable. And the last thing is like follow push-based development methods to deploy codes on dev environment. So we'll be seeing all those things on a case study.